Shalom and welcome to the One Pasuk podcast, where the rabbis at Congregation Avas Torah each share an insight on one particular pasuk from the parsha and reflect on each other's ideas. Rabbinic banter, I like to call it. I am Chaim Pupko, and I am joined by my dear friends and teammates, Rabbi Daniel Goldberg
Shalom.
And Rabbi Morty Jesus.
Shalom.
If you'd like to sponsor an upcoming episode, please contact the shul. All right, here we go. Our one pasuk for this week's parsha, Parshas Vaera, comes from almost the beginning of the parsha, Perek Vav Pasuk Gimel, chapter 6, verse 3. It feels like the first pasuk in the parsha, but it's not. The first one is Vaydaber Elokim el Moshe v'yomer elav ani Hashem. Our pasuk is the second one, from which the parsha derives its name. Va'era el Avraham el Yitzchak ve'el Yaakov be'el Shaddai. I appeared to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob as El Shaddai, Ushmi Hashem lo nodati lohem. But I did not make myself known to them by my name Hashem. Hashem says this to Moshe. He's back in Mitzrayim. We're ready to cook. Parsha Shmos was the setup for this amazing story that's going to unfold, and Parshas Vaera is when the gloves come off.
So this pasuk, it's a strange pasuk. It certainly invites interpretation. It requires explication. And of course, the starting point for how we think about this pasuk is the fact that the different names of Hashem represent the different ways that Hashem relates to the world, different midos that are intrinsic to Hashem, but that express themselves at different times in different ways throughout Jewish history, throughout our lives. And so the idea that there is a way in which Hashem manifests or expressed himself to Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, but a certain way that was not manifest. He didn't relate to them. It's kind of, let's say, the starting point for how we understand this pasuk. And Rashi says that the name Kel Shakai represents Hashem as the promise maker. He related to Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov in a way that there was a promise and a vision of something that would transpire, an arc to Jewish history, and he promised that to them. But it was only now, Hashem says, that I am Ushmi Hashem lo nodati lahem. Rashi says, the name of Hashem is Hashem as deliverer, as Hashem who makes good on and fulfills the promise. And to me, just thinking about the different ways that Hashem relates to the world and thinking about ourselves, it always hits home, because you think about so much of Jewish history, thousands of years of Jewish exile, where Hashem was very much a Kel Shakai. Our forebearers, just like in this moment, right, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov were incredibly great. It wasn't that they were not deserving of seeing Hashem's deliverance, but there's a moment in history when Hashem finally reveals that part of himself as deliverer. So to us, for thousands of years, the Jewish people have been wandering and have been in exile, and Jews far greater than we have only seen Hashem in many respects as a Kel Shakai, as the Hashem who holds out the promise of redemption. And in our lifetime, in a process that began before 1948, but certainly it had an important kind of revelation in 1948, right? We get to see Hashem. We see the fulfillment of this promise that we've been davening for, or the beginning of the fulfillments of a promise of a return of the Jewish people to the land of Israel, of a flowering of Torah in the land of Israel, of a flowering of the land itself of Israel. We live in a world of Hashem revealing himself as Yud Kei Vav Kei. And so it always really kind of, this pasuk hits home for me, and it's very relevant, I think, for our time. And look, we're recording in the lead up to the first tranche of hostages being released as part of this deal. As we sit here, we're still in the anticipating phase. I imagine by the time you're hearing this, I pray we will already have the faces of some hostages brought home. But as we sit right now, we've been davening, and we are eagerly awaiting to see in this small dimension of our world, Hashem go from Kel Shakai to Yud Kei Vav Kei, and to see the deliverance and to see our tefillos manifest. And so that also just speaks to this very moment right now.
Such a beautiful idea, such a beautiful application. I was going to prepare something very similar in terms of the approach and the question, but I got stuck on a question, and I'm curious if you guys have any thoughts on it. And that is, This Rashi, quoting the Mechilta, which says that the Avos didn't know me the way that you, Moshe, are going to know me as someone who fulfills his promises, That's not true. Each one of the Avos experienced the fulfillment of a promise. Avram and Sarah were given a child. Yitzchak saw progeny. When Yaakov puts his head down on his way out, and Hashem appears to him and makes promises, and he returns safely. Each one of them directly experienced Hashem as a promise fulfiller. So why would the Mechilta say this?
Terrific question.
Maybe it actually touches on the thought that I wanted to share. Perhaps it could address it. The Ibn Ezra points out that the term shakai is very unique. The Gemara Hagigah tells us that it was set aside for normal usage, so to speak, after the creation of the world. The formulation of shakai is she'amar le'olamo dai. When Hashem created the world, he had so much goodness, and at a certain point he recognized that the goodness and his ability to create could overwhelm his creation. And so he told the world, so to speak, she'amar le'olamo dai, he capped it in terms of his creativity.
Die meaning stop.
Stop.
Enough.
Stop. Enough. Correct. Now, a person may feel that name, no longer has relevant application. Evidently, it does not. We're using it here. We also know that in other places, the term shakai appears. And one of the great Hasidic masters, the Avodat Yisrael, explains, based on this Ibn Ezra that points out the term shakai, that there are times where Hashem operates within nature. When Hashem wanted to tell the world to stop, he didn't just say stop and it was cold turkey. He created a system called nature and an order to the world. There was unbridled creation. It was just incredible what was taking place. And then Hashem says, now this creation has to work within the confines of nature itself. And so once that name comes about in this formulation, Hashem employs it at different times throughout history. Obviously here, the context is obvious. We're going into a terribly difficult time in Jewish history, but yet at the same time, everything appeared in the natural order. That doesn't seem to be out of the ordinary per se. And so Hashem is sort of preparing the Geula, the redemption, but in a way in which it appears to be very natural. That was the idea I wanted to share, but to touch on your question, Rabbi Pupko, I believe perhaps those miracles that transpired were more within the realms of nature. And when Hashem said, I have to do something so out of the extraordinary, I mean, obviously you'll have to explain Avram having children at that advanced age, but it's the concept of having children is not out of the ordinary. But what Hashem is going to bring eventually throughout Jewish history, like Rabbi Goldberg captured, like all of us have experienced in our own lives, is a certain sense of Hashem where the salvation is so out of the ordinary, it clearly touches on Yud Kei Vav Kei and not necessarily the power in the name Shakai.
Yeah, I was thinking about something actually very, very similar, almost the same idea, and I would just frame it just a little bit different, that the miracles that were experienced or the salvations that were experienced by Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, yeah, they're within the natural order. Also, those miracles weren't just for them. Those miracles were part of the fulfillment of the bris that Hashem is referring to, that promise that has yet to be fulfilled. And so perhaps what the Mechilta, what Rashi is saying is, not strictly that they didn't know Hashem as a promise fulfiller, they didn't know Hashem as a bris fulfiller, as someone who has fulfilled this destiny. They've only seen parts. They've only seen certain critical steps along the way. They're not going to see the culmination, which I think relates to the experience of every generation throughout the Galus who experienced different salvations amongst lots of persecutions, and yearned for the Geula, and may have experienced a certain flavor of Geula, like we are today, but hopefully we'll be able to see it in its fullness the way that Hashem was promising to Moshe. So the idea I wanted to mention, it's actually a startling Rashi, which I never really caught my attention in previous years. And that is when it says, Vaera el Avraham el Yitzchak ve'el Yaakov, I appeared to Avraham, to Yitzchak, and to Yaakov. Rashi says, Vaera el ha'avos, I appeared to the Avos, the forefathers. Well, what is Rashi telling us? The pasuk says, I appeared to Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. It says it right there. What does Rashi add by saying, and I appeared to, these are the Avos? Do we not know that Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov are Avos? So the Chassam Sofer says, when Rashi identifies Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov as Avos, he's not just describing them as, these are the forefathers that we know, but he's appealing to a certain meaning, a certain sense of the word avos, but from the word ava, aleph, beis, hey, which means desire. or yearning. That what made the avos, what made Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov forefathers, patriarchs, is this desire to know Hashem and to be close to Hashem. And that's what defines them. And Hashem is summoning a certain emotion that he hopes will carry, that will sustain Bnei Yisrael through this ordeal that's going to play out, that is going to be difficult. And it's the emotion of faith in God that is going to sustain them as much as pure faith in God. It's the fact that Hashem cares about them. It's the fact that Hashem established this beautiful relationship with people who cared about him, who yearned for him, who desired to be in contact with him, that informs everything that Hashem is doing. And so Moshe should approach the Jewish people and not just help them restore their emunah, their faith, but the emotions that they should experience with that faith. Not just to believe in Hashem, but to know that Hashem is caring for them and watching over them, because this process is gonna get very, very difficult. I think we often think about faith in a strictly intellectual, or it's something in our minds that we believe, but faith is really much, much deeper than that. It touches on every aspect of our being, and it's something that touches on our emotions as well, which is why we're called upon to love Hashem and to stand in awe of Hashem, because it's not purely an intellectual endeavor. It's something that really touches on all our emotions, and we really have to bring our whole selves to every religious experience.
Beautiful. I think more than ever, this application of spiritual experience is more prevalent. Suddenly there's this understanding that we have to tap into the neshama. You hear today Litvish type thinkers really tapping into Hasidic thought and the sensitivity and the energy behind a lot of the Torah and mitzvot. And I think I'm seeing that more and more. And I mean, it certainly resonates personally, but I feel like the greatest motivator today for people, for students, for children, is when they see the beauty, they see the emotion, they see the depth behind a command, as opposed to just merely saying, like, let's put our head down and do it. Let's experience it. Let's understand what's behind it. And let's try and emulate the Avot that did everything with such passion. And that imagery is extremely inspiring.
You reminded me of something very quickly that I learned from Rabbi Zev Reichman, right here in town. Early on, when I came to Inglewood, there was some Wayu Yarchei Kala on Chassidus. And when Rabbi Reichman spoke, he very deliberately used a different word. The word he used was pnimius, that what it is about Chassidus is that it addresses the inner life of the Jew. The inner life, which includes all of the emotions, all of the struggles and the successes and the joy and the sorrow and everything. You reminded me of that, the pnimius. And in our day, you're absolutely right. People are more attuned to being touched by that pnimius, that which addresses the inner life.
The Chassam Sofer, I think, gives us a beautiful entryway into the pasuk, the Heishiv Lev Avos Al Banim, right? That the goal is to somehow transmit the Lev Avos, right? the heartfelt sense, the sincerity, the passion of the Avos Al Banim to the next generation.
Wow, great.
That's amazing.
Love that.
That's beautiful.
Brilliant.
You got to write that up and put that in your kuntras.
Done.
Shkoch, good Shabbos.